You know what nobody tells you about turning 80? That your own house can become your biggest enemy overnight. I learned this the hard way when I took a fall in my bathroom at 2 a.m., lying there for 3 hours until my neighbor Margaret heard me calling for help. That night changed everything I thought I knew about living alone safely. My name is Robert, and at 83 years old, I've spent the last decade figuring out how to make my home work for me instead of against me. After losing my dear wife Ellen 5 years ago, I had two choices: move to a facility or transform this old house into my fortress of independence. I chose to fight for my freedom, and today I want to share the 7 essential adaptations that saved my life and can save yours too. When Eleanor passed, this house felt enormous and terrifying. Every creak at night made my heart race. Every step down to the basement felt like walking into a dark abyss. The bathroom where we used to laugh together while getting ready each morning became an obstacle course of slippery surfaces and sharp corners. But instead of surrendering, I decided to wage war against my own limitations. The first thing I learned is that most people wait until after they fall to make changes. Don't be like most people. I was lucky that my fall only resulted in a bruised hip and wounded pride. My neighbor David wasn't so fortunate. He broke his wrist trying to catch himself when he slipped on his kitchen floor, and that injury spiraled into months of complications because he couldn't take care of himself properly anymore. Let me start with lighting, because darkness is the silent killer in every home. Before my accident, I thought I knew this house like the back of my hand. I'd lived here for 47 years, raised 3 children within these walls, and figured I could navigate every corner blindfolded. How wrong I was that night when I fell. I was trying to make my way to the bathroom in what I thought was adequate moonlight, streaming through the window, but shadows lie, and what looked like a clear path was actually my bedroom slippers lying exactly where I always left them. Now, every pathway in my house glows like an airport runway. I installed motion sensor LED strip lights along the baseboards in every hallway, creating a gentle illumination that activates the moment my feet hit the floor. These aren't harsh, blinding lights that shock you awake, but soft, warm guides that show you exactly where to step. I put them in the hallway leading to the bathroom, down the stairs, and even under my kitchen cabinets. The bathroom got special attention because that's where most home accidents happen. I installed a bright LED light bar above the mirror that's connected to a motion sensor. So the moment I enter the space, everything becomes crystal clear. No more fumbling for light switches with sleepy fingers. No more squinting in dim light, trying to distinguish between my toothbrush and razor. But lighting is just the beginning. The second adaptation that transformed my daily life was installing grab bars throughout the house. And not just in obvious places like the shower. Yes, I have sturdy grab bars in the shower and next to the toilet, but I also installed them along the hallway walls, next to my bed, and even by the front door steps. Here's what most people don't understand about grab bars. They're not admissions of weakness. They're declarations of independence. When I grip that bar to steady myself while putting on my shoes, I'm not giving into old age. I'm outsmarting it. When I use the grab bar to help myself out of bed on those mornings when my arthritis is particular, lie stubborn, I'm maintaining my autonomy. The grab bar installation taught me something profound about pride and practicality. For weeks, I stared at those bars, seeing them as symbols of my declining capabilities. Eleanor would have laughed at my stubbornness. She always said I had too much pride for my own good. But one morning, when I used the hallway grab bar to steady myself after a dizzy spell from my blood pressure medication, I realized these bars weren't taking away my dignity. They were preserving it by keeping me upright, independent, and in my own home. The third essential adaptation involves your floors, and this goes far beyond just removing throw rugs. I learned that different types of flooring require different strategies. My kitchen had these beautiful ceramic tiles that Eleanor picked out 20 years ago. They were gorgeous, but became death traps when even slightly wet. I couldn't bear to completely replace them because they held too many memories of Eleanor cooking her famous Sunday roasts. Instead, I invested in high-quality non-slip mats that don't look clinical or institutional. These mats have memory foam, backing that feels comfortable under my feet while providing incredible grip. I place them strategically in front of the sink, stove, and refrigerator. In the bathroom, I installed a complete non-slip floor treatment that's invisible but provides grip even when wet. But here's the detail most people miss: the transitions between different types of flooring. That slight rise where the hardwood meets the tile, or where the carpet edges meet the bathroom floor. These tiny elevation changes become massive obstacles when your depth perception isn't what it used to be, or when you're shuffling rather than lifting your feet properly. I installed gentle transition strips that create smooth pathways between different surfaces. The fourth adaptation revolutionized my relationship with technology and safety. A comprehensive communication system that keeps me connected to help when I need it most. This isn't just about wearing one of those "I've fallen and can't get up" pendants, though I do have one. It's about creating multiple layers of connection that work even when the primary system fails. I wear a smartwatch that monitors my heart rate and can detect falls automatically. But technology fails, batteries die, and signals get interrupted. So I also have a voice-activated assistant in every major room of the house. I can call for help just by speaking, even if I can't reach my phone or pendant. More importantly, I programmed it to make daily check-in calls to my son Michael in Denver and my daughter Sarah, who lives across town. Every morning at 9 a.m., the system sends them a message confirming I'm awake and moving around. If I don't respond to the system's prompts by 10 a.m., it automatically calls both of them and my neighbor Margaret. This might sound excessive, but it gives all of us peace of mind. They know I'm okay, and I know that if something happens, help will come quickly. The fifth adaptation focused on my bathroom, transforming it from a hazard zone into a sanctuary of safety and comfort. Beyond the grab bars and lighting, I installed a walk-in shower with a built-in seat. This wasn't just about safety. It was about maintaining the simple pleasure of a good, hot shower without fear. The walk-in shower has a zero-threshold entry, meaning there's no step to navigate. The floor has a textured surface that provides grip even when soapy. The handheld shower head allows me to control water flow and direction, preventing that disorienting feeling of water streaming down my face and obscuring my vision. But the real game changer was the shower seat. At first, I resisted it, thinking it made me look infirm. Then I realized that sitting down in the shower actually made the experience more relaxing and enjoyable. I could take my time, let the hot water ease my arthritis pain, and not worry about losing my balance. Sometimes the adaptations that initially hurt our pride end up enhancing our quality of life in unexpected ways. I also raised the toilet height by installing a seat extender. Getting up from a low toilet was becoming increasingly difficult and sometimes painful. The higher seat reduces the strain on my knees and makes the daily routine more comfortable and dignified. The sixth essential adaptation involved reorganizing my entire house to bring everything I need regularly within easy reach. This meant swallowing my pride and admitting that climbing on step stools or reaching for high shelves was no longer safe or practical. I moved all my frequently used dishes, glasses, and cookware to lower cabinets and countertop level. The beautiful china set that Eleanor and I received as a wedding gift, which had been displayed in the high cabinet for decades, came down to eye level where I could actually see and appreciate it daily. My medications, which I used to keep in the medicine cabinet above the bathroom sink, moved to a clearly labeled organizer on my kitchen counter where I eat breakfast every morning. This reorganization process was emotional. Every item I moved told a story of my changing capabilities, but it also revealed opportunities for rediscovering forgotten treasures. I had to add temporary handholds and move even more carefully until my body adjusted to the new prescription. This experience taught me to communicate with my doctor about how medication changes might affect my daily navigation and to prepare for adjustment periods by being extra cautious and adding temporary safety measures when needed. The social aspect of these adaptations has evolved too. What started as my Friday coffee club has grown into a neighborhood network of seniors who share resources, information, and regular check-ins. We've learned from each other's experiences and mistakes. When my friend Harold installed his stair lift, we all came to see how it worked and learned about considerations we hadn't thought of. When Patricia had to temporarily use a walker after her knee surgery, she taught us about navigating our homes with mobility aids. This network has become invaluable not just for safety, but for maintaining the social connections that are crucial for mental health and overall well-being. Living alone safely isn't just about preventing physical accidents. It's about preventing the isolation and depression that can be just as dangerous as any fall. We've also learned to advocate for each other with service providers and medical professionals when someone in our group needs equipment installed or home modifications made. We share reliable contractor information and sometimes even negotiate group discounts. We've become each other's research team, investigating new products and services that might help us all age more comfortably in our homes. The technology landscape keeps changing, offering new possibilities for enhanced safety and independence. Smart home systems have evolved dramatically even in the few years since I started my adaptations. I can now control lighting, temperature, and security systems with voice commands from anywhere in the house. My new smart doorbell lets me see and speak to visitors without having to navigate to the front door, which is especially helpful on days when my mobility is limited. But I've learned to be selective about which technologies to embrace. Some gadgets promise more than they deliver, and others create more complexity than convenience. The key is choosing technologies that genuinely solve problems you're experiencing, not just adopting every new innovation that comes on the market. My latest addition is a smart medication dispenser that not only organizes my pills, but also reminds me when it's time to take them and alerts my children if I miss a dose. This might seem like overkill, but medication errors are a leading cause of hospitalization among seniors, and this system eliminates the guesswork and memory challenges that could lead to dangerous mistakes. Looking back on this journey of adapting my home, I realize that each modification has been about more than just safety. They've been about maintaining my dignity, preserving my independence, and honoring the life Eleanor and I built together. In this house, every grab bar installed, every light sensor programmed, every communication system activated has been an act of defiance against the assumption that aging means surrendering control over your environment. The financial investment has been significant, but manageable when spread over several years. More importantly, it's been far less expensive than the alternative of assisted living or nursing home care, which in my area costs at least $4,000 per month. My total home adaptations over 5 years cost less than 6 months in a care facility, and they've allowed me to remain in the home I love. But the real value isn't measured in dollars saved. It's measured in mornings when I wake up in the bedroom I shared with Eleanor for 47 years. It's measured in evenings when I sit in my favorite chair, looking out at the garden we planted together. It's measured in the freedom to eat what I want, when I want, to keep my own schedule, to have friends over without asking permission, and to live according to my own preferences and routines. These adaptations have also allowed me to continue contributing to my community in ways that matter to me. I still volunteer at the local food bank twice a month. I mentor young fathers at my church, sharing the lessons learned from raising 3 children. I maintain the Neighborhood Watch program we started 20 years ago. Living safely at home has preserved not just my independence, but my sense of purpose and value. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret not moving to a retirement community where everything would be taken care of for me. The answer is always no. Those communities serve important needs for many people, but they couldn't provide what I need most: the continuity of place that connects me to my history, my memories, and my identity. Every room in this house tells a story. The kitchen where Eleanor taught our daughter Sarah to make pie crust. The living room where we watched our son Michael take his first steps. The garage where our youngest, David, learned to ride his bicycle. These aren't just rooms. They're repositories of love, laughter, and life itself. At 83, I've learned that home adaptation isn't about giving in to limitations. It's about intelligent design for the life you want to continue living. These 7 essential tips aren't just safety measures. They're freedom enablers that allow you to write new chapters in the home where your story began. Your house can remain your ally, your sanctuary, your foundation for whatever adventures still await. You know, If someone had told me 23 years ago that I'd be doing squats in my living room at 83, I would have laughed until my dentures fell out. But here I am. And let me tell you something that might surprise you. The strongest I've ever felt in my life wasn't when I was 25, carrying lumber at the construction site where I spent 40 years of my working life. It wasn't at 40, when I could still run a decent mile around the neighborhood park where I used to chase my kids on their bicycles. It was last Tuesday, when I helped my neighbor Margaret move her heavy oak couch from one side of her living room to the other, and I didn't feel that familiar sharp ache in my lower back that had haunted me for decades. This transformation didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't happen by accident. 3 years ago, I was what you'd call a typical 79-year-old man who had accepted his fate. I shuffled when I walked, like my feet were too heavy for my legs to lift properly. I groaned when I stood up from my worn leather recliner, the same chair where I'd watched thousands of baseball games and evening news broadcasts. I had convinced myself that muscle weakness, that gradual decline in physical capability, was just part of getting old. My doctor, Dr. Rebecca Martinez, had been telling me for years about the importance of strength training, but I kept brushing her off with the same stubborn attitude I'd had my whole life. I'm too old for that nonsense, I'd say, waving my hand dismissively. That's for young folks at those fancy gyms with their protein shakes and loud music. Looking back now, I realize I was scared. Scared of looking foolish, scared of admitting that I needed help, scared of facing just how weak I'd become, but mostly, I was scared that it was too late, that the damage was already done, that this was simply who I was now and would be until the day I died. Then came the wake-up call that changed everything, the moment that forced me to confront the reality of what I'd become. It was a rainy Thursday morning in October, the kind of gray, drizzly day that makes you want to stay inside, with a warm cup of coffee and a good book. I remember the details so clearly because that morning changed the entire trajectory of my remaining years. The smell of wet leaves was drifting through my kitchen window, mixing with the rich aroma of my usual morning brew. Sarah, my granddaughter, had dropped off some groceries the night before. Bless her heart, she'd been doing this more and more often, though we both pretended it was just because she was in the neighborhood and not because she was worried about my ability to take care of myself. Among those groceries was a 20-pound bag of dog food for Buddy, my 12-year-old golden retriever who had been my constant companion since my wife Eleanor passed away. Buddy was getting on in years too, moving a little slower, sleeping a little more, but still eager for his morning meal. I bent down to pick up that bag, something I'd done 1,000 times before without giving it a second thought, and my legs just gave out. Not dramatically, not with a crash that would have brought the neighbors running, but like someone had slowly deflated a balloon. My quadriceps simply couldn't support the weight, and I found myself sitting on the cold kitchen floor, looking up at the ceiling, with Buddy licking my face and probably wondering why his breakfast was taking so long. In that moment, staring at the water stain on my kitchen ceiling that looked like a cloud shaped like Texas, I realized something that terrified me more than any diagnosis or bad news I'd ever received. I was becoming fragile, not just old, but fragile. There's a profound difference between the two, you know. My father lived to 92, and even at the end, even when cancer was eating away at his body, he had this quiet strength about him, this dignity in how he carried himself. But me, I couldn't even lift dog food without my body betraying me. The shame I felt sitting on that kitchen floor was overwhelming. Here I was, a man who had built houses with his bare hands, who had carried his children on his shoulders, who had moved furniture and hauled Christmas trees and painted entire houses. Now I couldn't lift 20 pounds of kibble without collapsing like a house of cards. The next week, I swallowed what remained of my pride and made an appointment with Dr. Rebecca. I'd been seeing her for about 5 years, ever since my previous doctor retired, and she'd always been patient with my stubbornness and gentle with my fears. When I told her about the kitchen incident, describing every humiliating detail, she didn't give me the "I told you so" lecture I was expecting and probably deserved. Instead, she leaned forward in her chair, looked me directly in the eyes, and said something that stuck with me like glue. "Robert, your body isn't broken. It's just forgotten how to be strong. The good news is, we can remind it." She introduced me to something called sarcopenia, which sounds like some exotic disease, but is really just a fancy medical term for age-related muscle loss. She explained that after 30, we start losing muscle mass at a rate of 3 to 8% per decade. By the time you hit 70, if you haven't been actively fighting against this natural process, you might have lost 30 to 50% of your muscle mass. 30 to 50%. No wonder I couldn't lift that dog food. My muscles weren't just weak. They had practically disappeared, withered away like flowers in a drought. Dr. Rebecca showed me charts and studies, pulled out medical journals with before and after photos of people my age who had transformed their bodies through simple resistance training. She talked about something called muscle memory, how our bodies retain the blueprint for strength even after years of neglect. She explained that muscle tissue is remarkably responsive, that even people in their 80s and 90s could build significant muscle mass with the right approach. But here's the beautiful thing about our bodies, even at my age, even after decades of taking them for granted, they remember how to grow. Dr. Rebecca explained that resistance training, even simple exercises done at home with nothing more than your own body weight, could not only stop muscle loss but actually reverse it. She said I could gain muscle mass at 80 just like I could at 30, maybe even faster because my body was so hungry for the stimulation it had been missing. That conversation planted a seed, but like any seed, it needed time and the right conditions to grow. Change, real lasting change, is like growing tomatoes in your backyard. You plant the seed with hope and determination, water it faithfully every day, pull the weeds that try to choke it out, and for weeks it looks like absolutely nothing is happening. The soil looks the same, there's no visible progress, and you start to wonder if you're wasting your time. Then one morning, you walk outside with your coffee, and there's a tiny green shoot pushing through the dark earth, reaching toward the sun. That's exactly how it was with these exercises. Dr. Rebecca started me with 4 simple movements that I could do right in my living room, using nothing but my own body weight, and maybe a chair for support. She called them the Foundation 4. And now, 3 years later, I understand exactly why she chose that name. These aren't just exercises, they're the building blocks of independence, dignity, and confidence in your later years. They're the difference between being someone who needs help and someone who can still give help. The first exercise she taught me was something called the sit-to-stand, and I have to admit, when she first demonstrated it, I thought she was joking. Sounds simple, right? Almost embarrassingly simple. You'd be amazed, though, how humbling this movement can be when you really focus on it and do it correctly. The idea is to sit in a chair and stand up without using your hands for support, relying entirely on the strength of your leg muscles. When Dr. Rebecca first demonstrated it in her office, sitting in one of those standard medical chairs and smoothly rising to her feet, without so much as touching the armrests, I thought, that's it. That's the big secret to staying strong. But when I tried it myself, using that same chair, I realized with a shock that I'd been using my hands to push myself up from chairs for years, without even thinking about it. It had become such an automatic compensation that I didn't even realize I was doing it. I started practicing at home using my dining room chair, one with a firm seat about 18 inches high, no armrests to tempt me into cheating. The first day, I could barely do 3 repetitions without instinctively grabbing for something to help me up.